The man of God was risen early and gone forth. Behold, a host compassed the city, both with horses and chariots. This is the enemy. This is the Syrian army, the enemy to the Israelites. That's what it's talking about, who surrounded the city. And his servant said unto him, Alas, my master, how shall we do? Or what shall we do? And he answered, Fear not, for they that be with us are more than they that be with them. And Elisha prayed and said, Lord, I pray thee, open his eyes, that he may see. And the Lord opened his eyes of the young man, and he saw, and behold, the mountain was full of horses and chariots of fire round about Elisha. I want to preach on this thought, blindly looking. Blindly looking. Have you ever been looking for something and not been able to find it? Just to find out a little later that what you were looking for was right in front of you the whole time? Have you ever had this experience? Well, I'm going to have a little honest session with you, very transparent, but I suffer from this condition. It's called blindly looking. And I think sadly, if most men would agree, Mel says all men. Let's calm down a little bit about that. All men probably suffer from this condition that we are looking for something, and so many times what we're looking for is right in front of us. You know, we've had sayings like this, well, if that was a snake, it would have bit you, right? I struggle with this very often in my life. There's these little things. We got a little 2-year-old, and so we still have safety features on our cabinets to keep Lexi, the monster, out of our cabinets. We have these little magnets, and the only way to get into lower cabinets is you have to find the little white thing that has the magnet in it to release the magnet in the cabinet. That way it releases, unlocks it, and you can open it. But those white little things that you have to find to put on the cabinet to release it, I have the hardest trouble finding them. You would think that we would put them in the same place, but for whatever reason, they're always in a different place. And I always can't find them. And then lo and behold, my wife will walk into the same kitchen at the same time and find the white magnet in a matter of 5 seconds. And you know what I was doing? I was blindly looking. I was looking in the right spot, but for whatever reason, I'm blinded to what I was looking for. My wife's even said this to me before in her frustrations because I'm looking and I can't find. She's like, are you blind? Like, seriously? Like, what's wrong with you? How can you not see that? And if we're not careful, this is how we can walk through life. We're looking around with our physical eyes, but we can be blinded with our spiritual eyes. My goodness, I've thought about this, but how many teenagers have came into a youth group like this or a church service and they've been seeing fine physically, but they've been blinded spiritually? So let's take it off the young people for a minute. How many adults walk into the other building on a Sunday morning and they can see physically fine, but they're blinded spiritually? But too many young people have made decisions and choices. Too many. Too many of you make decisions and choices blindly, not seeing the big picture. You date this person, you disobey your parents, you go to this place, and you're looking blindly, or you're blindly looking. And in these verses, we see a young man. We know this young man as a servant to the man of God, Elisha, who was looking at a situation blindly. Maybe you're there tonight. Maybe you see what you want to see. Maybe you hear what you want to hear. There could possibly be a teenager in the building tonight that your parents sit down and they try to tell you truth and they try to have a conversation with you, but you think they're so off base, you think they're totally out of touch, and you are blindly looking at your life, you're blindly looking at a situation, and you're not seeing the big picture. Maybe you feel how you want to feel, and maybe you're going to do what you're going to do, and it doesn't matter what anybody says or what anybody's going to do. You're blindly looking at your life. But here's what I believe. Maybe tonight God is going to open your eyes to the truth. Not your physical eyes, but your spiritual eyes. And just really quickly, these few verses, I want to look at 4 things. Number 1, I want you to notice there was a desperate situation. Notice verse 15, we read it. But it says, when the servant of the man of God was risen early and gone forth, behold, a host compassed the city, both with horses and chariots. We don't have time to look at the whole story, but long story short, the king of Syria was mad at the man of God, Elisha, because God kept telling Elisha what the Syrians was going to do, and Elisha kept telling the children of Israel and the king, and so the Syrians' plans never worked out. And so he finally had enough of this man called Elisha, and he said, I'm going to teach him a lesson. And so that's where we pick up in this verse. It says that the servant walked out, he looked, and what did he see? Behold, a host compassed the city, both with horses and chariots. He was surrounded. They were surrounded. The city was surrounded, and they were going to be fighting a losing situation. There was a desperate situation here in this verse. If you're not careful, this is how you will view your life. This is how you will view school. This is how you will view culture. This is even how maybe you come to church. That you feel your life is you are surrounded. You get up, you look out, and you see the world around you, and you say, oh my, this is a desperate situation. I'm surrounded by the enemy. Think about it like this. In our media, in our music, and in our methods, we're surrounded by the enemy. You cannot go much in this world and not be reminded that there is an enemy for your soul. I was talking to Pastor John. I know two of his kids are in here, but I was talking to Pastor John yesterday. This is how easy and how surrounded we really are by the enemy. He was telling me about a game that he plays on his phone that his family plays called Brawl Stars. Is that right? Brawl Stars? I'm looking for Grayson. Is that the right name of it? And so this is a game, fun game. Been playing it for years. Just a game on your phone, whatever, do all of this stuff. They do little different seasons throughout, like each month is a different theme. Am I saying that right? Is that about right? I'm doing all this. And so it's just a fun game. Kids play it. Teenagers play it. Adults play it. It's just a fun game. You get a little character, you fight, whatever. And then lo and behold, this month, November, what did this game drop? The theme for this game was demons and angels. You could steal souls and drag them to hell and all this stuff. And it's like, whoa! And he told me 2 months ago the theme was SpongeBob. So we went from SpongeBob as the theme to demons and angels and dragging souls to hell. You see what I mean? How quickly it can be like, wow, I'm surrounded with this dark influence on my life. We've all been there before. If you have access to television, if you have access to social media, you've been there before. Innocently watching something, innocently scrolling something, and then the influences of the enemy is there on your screen just like that. The influences of the enemy is there on your TV screen just like that. And if you're not careful, you'll look and you'll see, and it's like, well, we're surrounded. The enemy has us cornered. There is no way out. And no doubt the servant felt like this. We're fighting a losing battle. It really doesn't look like the good guys win. I don't know. It's been a while since I've been in school. It's been a while since I've been on a ball team, right? In a public environment, a public ball team. But I doubt it's changed much. I doubt that you walk into your school, even some of you that go to a Christian school, I knew what it was like going to a Christian school, doubt that it feels much, when you walk into the halls of Irwin High School, it feels like you're going to win. I'm on the winning side. I see Imagine. I doubt it feels like that. You put in your school, North Buncombe, Inca, whatever it is, it feels like you're surrounded. It's probably, again, I haven't been to school in a while, but it's probably still not popular to always do the right thing, to carry your Bible to school, to read it at lunch. I doubt you would win a popularity award if you did those things in your school. Because we're surrounded by the enemy. And it is a desperate situation. If you look out in the moment with your physical eyes, it is a desperate situation, but I want you to notice there was a dire summation. There's a desperate situation followed by a dire summation. Notice what he says at the end of the verse. And his servant said unto him, Alas, my master, how shall we do, or what shall we do? What shall we do? Do you understand the desperate situation and then the dire summation? He summarized from what he saw, it's hopeless and it's helpless. Fear is gripping this young servant's heart. He's looking at the enemy, and his best summarization from looking at what he sees from the situation is that he is in trouble. And from this position, notice this, from the position that he's looking at the situation, he summarizes and then he asks this question, what shall we do? And I want to tell you, this is a question that every teenager in the world is asking. Every teenager in the world is asking this question. What shall we do? What do we do? I don't care if the teenager grows up in church. I don't care if the teenager is here tonight or the teenager's never been to church. They are asking inside of them, what do we do? What shall we do? And I'm going to tell you, the future of your life is going to be determined. The future of you, the future of your existence will be determined by who you ask that question to. You get it? How many teenagers, they look at their friend beside them and say, hey, what do we do? This is a desperate situation. My dire summation is we're on the losing side. So what do we do? Your success as a Christian is going to be determined a lot by who you ask that question to. There was a desperate situation, there was a dire summation, and then there was a question that was asked, what shall we do? But you know what made the difference for this servant? Who did he ask? The man of God. He asked Elisha. He didn't go to a fellow servant in the same situation that he was in and say, hey, we've got a big problem. It seems like we're surrounded and it seems like the enemy has us cornered. What are we going to do? Who did he go to? The man of God, Elisha. So there was a desperate situation. There was a dire summation. Then notice Elisha's direct solution. What was his direct solution? Look at verse 16. And he answered, fear not, for they that be with us are more than they that be with them. For they that be with us are more than they that be with them. What was his first response to the young man? Fear not. Don't be afraid. How many teenagers make decisions in their life based upon fear? And most of the time, the decisions, when I talk about decisions, so a decision not to do something is a decision, right? How many teenagers decide not to do something because of fear? How many teenagers miss out on the will of God because of fear? It holds them back. And what was Elisha's response to the young servant? He's looking with his physical eyes. This isn't looking good. This is a really bad situation. And my summation is that we're in trouble. So what do we do? And Elisha's response was, fear not. And then he says this, for they that be with us are more than they that be with them. Do you know what's going to determine your success in life? Is if you go to a person and ask the question, what shall we do? And if that person has some spiritual discernment in their life. If they have the ability to look with spiritual eyes and see the bigger picture. That's why it's so important for you to be here tonight. Maybe you don't want to be here tonight. Maybe you're just here. Maybe you like coming and you love youth group and this is just what you do on Wednesday night. But however you shake it or however you break it down, the point to all of this is that you have to be with people who have spiritual eyes that's able to see the bigger picture as a teenager, because here's the truth, you can't. Your mind does not have the ability. But here's what I do know. I've been in this long enough that I've seen teenagers, 15, 16 years old, that God has blessed them with spiritual discernment beyond their years, and they can make it through this life because they're hanging out with the right people that they can learn from and they can ask the questions from. Here's the point. What was his response? Fear not. Why am I not going to fear, Elisha? Because they that be with us is more than they that be with them. And then we don't have this conversation actually in the Bible, but here's what's going on in the young servant's mind. No, we don't. Are you looking at the same thing I'm looking at, Elisha? Like, that's a great motivational speech, and it probably sounds really good at a halftime of a basketball game, but that's not really the reality. That's not right. You missed it. You know what Elisha's telling this young man? God's bigger. God's bigger than the problem that you're looking at right now. How do you say that? How are you surrounded by the enemy and you can say God is bigger than that? Because you have spiritual discernment. Because you have spiritual eyes. Because you can see what God is doing. Elisha's telling the young servant, God is bigger than all of this. You're on the winning side. God is bigger than your problems. I think there's a song that they sing at Arise that says all this stuff. God's bigger than your problems. God's bigger than your doubts. God's bigger than your sins, and God's bigger than your mistakes. Listen, Elisha's referring to the fact that this God is the same God that used a little shepherd boy and 5 smooth stones and put one of them in a slingshot and nailed the giant and killed Goliath. That's that God. It's the same God that shuts the mouth of lions, that set people free, that healed the lame, that causes the blind to see. It's this God. You know what this is? It's the truth of the Bible. God is always the answer. And if you don't believe God is always the answer for your life, then you're going to have a really hard time looking into the world around you and having spiritual discernment to make the right decisions. You always have to run back to this Bible, like we talked about last Wednesday night, and you always have to run back to the fact that God is the answer. That's not what I see. That's not what I necessarily understand in the moment, but that's what I believe. And here's what this really boils down to. I'm going to finish in just a moment. But you have to understand there's a difference between what you see and what you truly believe. And if you live your life, even as a 15-year-old or as a 16-year-old, based upon only what you see, and you're not anchored by what you believe, you're going to be really messed up. We all can give an examples of some teenagers, maybe some of your friends, that they're living right now in their life. In the moment that they're living blindly. They're making decisions that do not make sense. It's because they're blinded. Elisha gave him a direct solution, and then notice there was a desired salvation. A desired salvation. Notice what Elisha does. And Elisha prayed and said, Lord, I pray thee, open his eyes that he may see. And the Lord opened the eyes of the young man. And what did he see? For the first time, he gets to see with his spiritual eyes. For the first time in this situation, God allows him to see with his spiritual eyes. And what does he see? He saw what Elisha was talking about. And behold, the mountain was full of horses and chariots of fire round about Elisha. Let me ask you this question. I got points. I got some more to this point. But do you think after that young servant saw the mountain filled with horses and chariots of fire, that he just went back and was like, okay, that's cool. Oh, okay. You know, chariots of fire, horses, mountain full. I think it probably helped his faith. Don't you think he might have got a little excited? Don't you think he might have said, wow, what a God, right? I'm going to say this very carefully because I know we're all different. But I think part of the problem why some of us don't worship, we never raise a hand. Never. Not one time. Like never raise a hand. Is because we really don't see what God's doing. We really don't see what God's doing in our life. We really don't see His grace in our life. We really don't see His love, and we're blinded. And so when we're up here singing about His promises and God is faithful and He's never failed me, we don't really see what He's doing. There was a desired salvation. What was the desire from Elisha? That the young man's eyes would be open. Open his eyes. God is the only one that can give you spiritual eyes to see spiritual things. And you cannot live, it's impossible to live a spiritual life with carnal eyes. It's impossible to live a spiritual life with carnal eyes. You have to see the potential of what God is wanting to do. But too many of us, we are blindly looking. And all we see in the moment, and all you see is the moment. That's what teenagers struggle with, right? You only see this moment. You only see being 13. You only see being 15. You only see being 16. But God can give you eyes to see the victory and the purpose that He wants to give you in your life. So stop, listen to me, young man. Listen to me, young lady. Stop looking blindly at your life. Your life is so much bigger than the moment of 13 years old. Oh, goodness. Praise God, it's bigger than being 13 years old. Your life is so much bigger than being 16. Your life is so much bigger than being 18. It's so much bigger than just this moment, but that's what you struggle with, is that this is my life, and this is all that really matters is this moment. Your life is bigger than the boy or the girl you date, or the car that you drive, or the shoes that you wear. It's bigger than all that. And here's what my prayer is tonight. I'm going to ask Josh to come. We're going to wrap this up. But for each individual teenager in this room, for you to ask God to give you spiritual eyes to see God's plan and His power and His purpose for your life, you can't keep looking at your life through carnal eyes and expect to live a successful Christian life. It's just not going to work. And whether it be flipping on a TV, pulling up the phone, walking into school tomorrow and having a conversation with a friend, whatever it is, you have to ask God to give you spiritual discernment. God, let me see what you're doing. And then when you stop only seeing through your carnal eyes, and God gives you spiritual eyes to see, you can respond with all confidence. They that be with us are more than they that be with them. And somebody, no doubt in this room, you're missing God because you're not seeing everything He wants to do with your life. Somebody in this room, you're going to miss God because you never see the whole potential God has for your life. It's time to take the blinders off. And it's time to say, God, open my eyes. Not these, but my spiritual eyes to see what you're wanting to use my life for. And see, here's what happens when God takes off the spiritual blinders in a young person's life. When He takes off the spiritual blinders in your life, you start dreaming different dreams. You start saying, my goodness, how could God use my life? My goodness, who could God call me to marry? Where could I go to college? And then you start asking questions like this. Instead of, where should I go to college? Or what should I study? Or who should I date? You start asking questions like this. What college does God want me to go to? What person? Who does God want me to date? Right? And God is going to allow you to see the chariots on the mountain and the horses. Don't live in fear. Your life is so much bigger than that. I'm going to ask everybody to bow your head and close your eyes. And we're going to open up the altar. I want to ask who would come and find a place to pray and pray the prayer that Elisha prayed for the young man. God, open this man's eyes. How many would pray that for yourself? God, open my eyes to what you're wanting to do in my life.